Hey everyone, back with another review, and as you can probably already see and hear, I am not in my sword room this time, but I'm actually in our hall. We don't have training today, so I thought, among other things, I just used the chance to actually get a better angle on this one here, which will be what I want to talk about today, the Spes fencing kaftan, or a customized version of the Spes fencing kaftan. And before we get to that, as per usual, some formalities. So as we do with all our reviews, we will have timestamps in the description. There will be some formalities, which is now. Then there will be the review. After the review, there will be some photos, generally with some stats, though not necessarily in this case, because there really isn't that much to give when it comes to objective stats measurements. Then a video where you can really see the piece in motion. Though, as with the last soft kit review, the Officers L2 customized that I had from Spes, if you have seen some things on the channel of the last month, then there is a good chance you will have seen this one already, because it's my second fencing jacket, and I try to alternate between the two, and it also kind of depends a bit on what I do. But yeah, so much for that. Into the review. As always, a bit on the order process, a bit on the piece itself, a bit on what I like, some things I would consider watchouts. So, first of all, maybe, again, when I say customized, what do I mean by that? Well, for one, as I said, 800 Newton. So this isn't the normal 350 Newton fabric. I just asked them if they could do it in 800 Newton because, well, I like the color, frankly, and I also just like the material. It's just a bit firmer, but of course, it's also a bit heavier. That's just, you know, a clear trade-off. Also, because I was kind of curious on how they would actually work, and because I think they look quite nice, I also asked them to add some buttons to the whole piece. So that is basically the part of it that isn't exactly standard. Other than that, it is also customized to my size again, because as I said in the last review, unfortunately my frame, because I'm basically a rectangle, doesn't really lend itself to the standard sizes that Spes has in their repertoire. But the good thing is, Spes is really quite good, at least in my experience so far, having 3 customized pieces from them when it comes to sizing, quite good in making custom sizes. Not only do you get quite a good list of just measurements you need to take and pictures of where to take them, they actually have a page on that, and there's also videos where they really just show from where to where do you need to measure, which is quite nice, because if the person who does the actual work doesn't take the measurements, there's always the chance that something gets lost in translation, and that can be bad when it comes to custom-sized clothes, really. But yeah, didn't have that with Spes so far, because the instructions are quite clear, the videos are quite good, and the result, the 3 times that I've done it, were really quite nice. Can only recommend it in that. Same basically goes for the ordering process. As far as my experience with Spes goes, they were always friendly, quick to respond, and just reliable, really. So, as with the officer's jacket, really, I wrote them, I asked if what I wanted was possible. They replied, unsurprisingly, the answer was yes, and calculated the price. I sent over the money, they entered the order into their system, I got updates through the system, I was notified when it was done, just got the tracking number, and voila, these showed up at my doorstep, and I'm really quite happy with the whole process. So, on the jacket itself, it's a kaftan, so it's basically a mantle, you could maybe say. It's really its own thing, but it's unlike the other, or most of the jackets that Spes normally does, for HEMA at least, it's not short on the hip, but it actually extends further. It does cover my knees actually when I wear it, so it's hanging a bit higher now, but it goes over my knee actually, which is quite nice. There's just a bit of extra protection there. And it is a bit, well, there is some cushioning to it, some padding. There is extra padding in the front, really. There is extra padding on the arm. Really no extra padding other than the fabric and the inner material on the lower arm or elbow, but that's where you have the hooks for the hard shell for. Blade catcher as per usual. There's also some extra protection on the shoulder, but that just basically extends from the front, so that is quite nice. If I were to compare it to the jackets that I really owned so far, leaving the ice hockey gear of the past in the closet where it belongs, I've had the AP, an old AP of theirs, then I had an older Neumann when they were still around. I now have the Officer's L2 and, well, the Kaftan. And between those, I would say this probably comes closest to the old AP I had in padding, really. It is certainly heavier than the Officer's L2 because this one does have extra padding in the front, which the Officer's L2 doesn't. There you only have the 2 layers of fabric, really. It is heavier than the Neumann that I had. So, taking that into account, this is basically my jacket when I might do things that could potentially get a bit heavier. You know, or things like a group engagement maybe, where things could be a bit less chaotic and you're just happy for some extra protection that you have, particularly at the leg, for example, then that is probably the jacket that I would wear for that. Now, the extra protection, not only the 800 Newton fabric, but also just the length of it, comes at a price, of course, not only price-wise, but also just weight. This is heavier, just because, you know, it's basically, I don't know, about double as much fabric around. And it does have a much higher footprint, just to package it, really. Getting this one into my normal training bag definitely is more work than my Officer's L2. And if I were to think about international travel again, I will probably want to take that one, just because then I have the most freedom of what I actually want to do. But I'll have to see if I can actually bring it with the bags I have. I mean, probably, but basically, fun aside, this one is just harder to pack and heavier. Also, because it does extend further down, there is certainly more heat development in it. I got this in mid-May, I think, and it wasn't the hottest summer around in Germany this year, but I certainly felt that. So that is just something to consider. If you are in a very hot, very humid area, you might want to give this a try if you somehow have the chance, just because I could imagine this being quite warm. And generally, as with all jackets, once you've sweated through, the heat dissipates easier, but until then, it could potentially really get quite warm. Also, one other thing to just keep in mind is that this one needs a belt. So when you see me wearing it in the videos, I generally have a belt. This one is just a cheap leather belt that I had, because I like the optics really, and it's quite slim. The good thing about that is that it fixates it a bit on the hip, and that just makes it really quite comfortable to wear, and I definitely never had any problem with it rising. Part of that, you know, when you lift your arm, part of that is probably just because this is custom size, so it does fit me quite well, and also it's longer, so even if it lifts, you know, your hip isn't as exposed, and the belt basically does the rest, I would say. So when it comes to comfort, other than it getting quite warm, I really quite like it. When it comes to protection, I also really quite like it. I have used it for pretty much, you know, again, everything that I do. So some daggers, spear fencing, bit of longsword, saber, broadsword, rapier, these kind of things. And it was perfectly fine for all of that. There are some quirks to the jacket that I think are worth noting, other than that it can get quite warm. Not necessarily problems, but things to be aware of. Maybe things that Spes could do better, because this is just quite an early version of it, I think. I basically saw this one, or saw the first picture of the Kaftan, and knew that I really wanted one. One, at least, when done to my measurement, the arms are quite long, which in a way is quite good, because then you don't have a gap when you wear it. The downside to that can be that depending on how the gloves sit, it can get in the way a bit. With all the gloves I wear, be it leather or motorcyclish types medium gloves, or my heavier sparring gloves, infinity gauntlets, then just, it never got in the way so bad that I felt it was really a problem, but I had to adjust it a couple of times, just, you know, when putting it on. As soon as I had my things on, everything was fine, but that's just, I think, to the cut, really. Another thing, and I mentioned that in the officer's review, is the inner material. Generally speaking, I really like it compared to their older liner material, because it helps just moving heat away from your body, and it dries much better, which with a big and comparatively heavy piece like this is even more important. But unfortunately, there is the thing that the 3D mesh is just more vulnerable to Velcro hooks. And with the normal jackets that end about here, you mostly have to consider if you have a gorget, a throat protector that has Velcro. I do, so that left a mark. Now I know what to watch out for and make sure that the hooks don't really show and are covered as good as they can be, and I'm looking into just changing my gorget. But with this one, the problem is also that it extends further down, and that basically means that you have to watch your pocket, really. And I didn't really think about that, because, you know, with the other jackets I never had to, and that meant that at the spot where my pocket is, I do actually have a rough patch now of the liner material, simply because, well, the Velcro hooks hook into the material and pull the strings out. It's not broken or anything, I can still use it, but you really have to take care that either your pockets don't have Velcro, or if they have Velcro, make sure that they are covered. Or, if you do order this, maybe ask Spes if they can put just in the area of where your belt or things, inside belt, or things like, you know, pocket Velcro, stuff like that could be. They just put some stronger, maybe some of the outside material in that area. A bit of the same goes here to the part where the Velcro actually sits. There is some liner material here, and again, that can just come in contact. As I said, maybe that is something that could just be considered for the Kaftan in general, that parts where there is just a proximity to the Velcro, or where Velcro could end up being, because of pants, you know, pockets, things like that. Maybe it would be better to add some material that is just a bit less susceptible to getting the strings pulled. Other than these watchouts, I have to say I really like it. I know what to watch out for now, so I don't have a problem with it, and I don't consider it a problem at this point. I like that this gives extra protection to my legs, and I do appreciate, depending on what I do, the extra protection to the front. And frankly, but that's subjective, of course, I really think it looks quite good. So if you are in the market for something that is maybe a bit different looking, or if you want something that gives you extra protection for the leg, and you don't really have a problem when it comes to the heat or, you know, just the bulk of it, then I can really only recommend this piece. I quite like my kaftan, so this will be my heavier jacket that I'm just going to switch. More time to dry for the other one. When I go to events where I don't necessarily know how things will turn out or who I face, that's probably also, if I can bring it, the jacket that I will take. It's just a bit heavier padded. Generally, recommendation. I really quite like this one. Cheers. Really easy, eh? It's just prime into it.
Schön.